My name's Adam Marino. I play guitar in Saetia. I've played in bands such as Aerotype 11, Instruction, and Attempt Survivors.
I am Billy. I am the vocalist of Saetia.
Clearly.
As you can tell.
As you can tell.
I other than Saetia, I was also the vocalist in Hot Cross.
I'm Colin. I played bass in Saetia. I've also played in The Fiction and Gunners, and also currently playing in a garage band called Sonic Power Pops.
I'm Steve. I currently play drums in Saetia. I previously played bass and very briefly guitar, also in Saetia. I played drums and sang in Off Minor and Amateur Party and Books Lie and a bunch of other bands.
Sweet. So then initially, what got you guys, to kind of reiterate what I asked before, what got you guys into heavier music, and what was like the importance of catharsis in your youth? Because you guys were all pretty young family for Saetia, right?
Yeah, about 19, 20 years old.
Yeah. So what drew you guys to catharsis? Why was that important for you guys? Like, why weren't you guys listening to more, mellow, melodic music?
I mean, I can't speak for everyone else, but I was listening to. I grew up on hip hop, and I think that also transitioned to late '80s hip hop in New York was such a huge thing, but then also metal simultaneously, and then for me alternative music. So those three worlds just combined and hit at the exact moment, same time. So I was personally listening to all that stuff.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think like if you grew up in New York City, like hip hop was just sort of in your DNA, and I think that was like a lot of people's gateway into underground and alternative music in general, because hip hop was an underground culture when we were all exposed to it. It wasn't the mainstream. You really had to search for it on the radio, and I think also metal was sort of like Jamie and I were joking about how hip hop and metal were like cultures for nerds, and they just sort of like went really well together because you really had to dig deep to find music, which to me naturally dovetails into punk in a pre-internet world, because you kind of have to search for stuff. So I think I can't speak for Colin and Steve and the rest of the guys, but in New York at least, it was a hip hop to metal to alternative to punk sort of melding. Punk seemed to grab some of the sonic qualities and ethos of all of those things. The DIY of hip hop, the aggression of metal, the ethical and political world that you would find in sort of alternative music in the 80s and 90s and college rock and that kind of stuff. Punk seemed to be like a really tidy combination of what I like best about all of those worlds. And so that's kind of what drew me there. And then the anger and aggression and frustration is just, when you're between the ages of like 16 and 20, and you're like a guy navigating the world of high school and everything else, it's you sort of naturally end up in these places if you're not a jock, if you're not a young Republican, you kind of end up pretty annoyed and frustrated with what's around you. So I think that's probably something that we could all find in common.
Yeah, I grew up in Brooklyn, and then when I was about 12 or 13, I moved to basically a town that you're describing filled with jocks and young Republicans. And that's around the time that I started getting to harder music, at first metal and then later punk and hardcore. And there's just something about, I just hated so many people that I was surrounded by. And here was music that they hated that just made me feel like I could beat them all up, which I clearly could not. And it just steamrolled from there. And then like being like a 16-year-old kid that didn't drink or smoke or anything like that, and hearing Minor Threat for the first time, and being like, there are other people like you, and then that leading to going to shows and meeting people that are genuinely like you, it's intense. And I'm just so grateful, because it made some very lonely times at that point in my life a lot less lonely.
Yeah, definitely. And where we grew up, like all this music is frowned upon severely, and there's a minimal audience where we grew up. This is probably the only person I know who listens to this sort of shit. So, what was like, what talk more about like the liberation that you may have felt, like finding some sense of belonging. Because New York is a really privileged place in the sense that you're exposed to a lot of different communities, whereas not everywhere in the world is like that. So was it liberating to finally find a sense of home, or for lack of a better word?
I don't know, liberating, but it was just nice to, you know, just find a group of people that like you all enjoyed, you know, going to like having this moment every week where on the weekend, you know, you can kind of meet at this place and enjoy something together, and you know, with like-minded people.
Yeah, I mean, I think you want, you know, as when you're young, especially, you want to belong somewhere, and I think a lot of people, you know, when you're in your late teens and you're in your teens and your 20s, you're trying to like, you know, you'll try on a lot of hats and try to figure out like what feels right for you, and you know, and the punk scene, at least the hardcore scene in New York, was very welcoming and accepting to a degree. Back then.
Yeah. Let's talk about the formation of Saetia. When did you guys actually think, like, beyond just observing music, you guys want to participate in it?
We probably all find our way there individually.
Sure.
Like through the individual paths, right?
You know, I started, you know, we all started bands, I guess, in high school. We all had bands in high school, so I was doing a band in high school, and then I went to NYU, and that band broke up, and I did another band, and so segue nicely into Billy's tale, which was we met at WNYU, and at Steve's tale as well, because WNYU is the radio station for NYU. I don't even know if it still exists.
It's still going.
It does, yeah.
Sure.
And they had a hardcore show, punk show called Crucial Chaos, which has existed since the 80s. And so we would all go. Colin, too. Yeah, so we all met there, kind of. I mean, I definitely met Billy there, although we kind of knew each other from ABC No Rio, too. Like, the associated...
Like, oh, I've seen that guy.
Yeah, this fucking guy.
I think the draw to Crucial Chaos also was that there was a live band every week. So you had this kind of like private show in this room that was like the size of this porch,
Right.
basically. And I don't know, it just, you know, it's, again, ties into like belonging and feeling like, you know, this kind of like this little club that you're like, this kind of secret thing you're kind of in on. I don't know.
Adam Marino, and I.
Some guy named Adam Marino.
Adam and I met in Queens because that's where we both lived, and he worked at a Haagen-Dazs on one corner, and I worked at a Boston Chicken that was across the street.
Are you sure you're not confusing yourself with Henry Rollins and Ian McCall?
No, this is absolutely this is 100% true.
Yeah.
And we sort of got to know each other better, just 100%. Sort of being in the same area all the time, and got to talking about music and talking about doing a band. And
so we started going to shows all the time.
And Adam was like videotaping shows and was like really into it, and you know, knew some of the folks that were in bands at the time too. So we, in our hanging out, you know, we had talked about, you know, potentially playing music or doing something, and then I had met these guys in college around the same time, and so it just kind of was one of those like, I love it when a plan comes together, and it just kind of happened that way, and we weren't thinking about anything other than like let's just try this thing. Yeah. There wasn't some like intent to like create something new. It was just we wanted to participate, and we wanted to participate beyond just being audience members or show bookers or whatever it might be. We sort of wanted to be in front of people saying something, and it just, you know, we just got really lucky. As it turned out, we were all sort of the same like ethical makeup. You know, it's really easy for this band to make decisions most of the time because we pretty much start and end at the same place. We're very different people, but at the same time, when it comes to the band, we really do operate as a unit, and I think it's been a good experience sort of getting back together and sort of picking up where we left off. I think the roots were sort of sown early because we had relationships that weren't just the band. Like the band was like an outcropping of relationships that already existed, which I think also helps. You know, it wasn't just like put an ad in the back of like, you know, the magazine, like, need like a killer guitar player, no mercs, must like Deep Purple, like.
But I also think our sound also like is a direct result of the fact that yes, we all love hardcore, punk, whatever, but we all, aside from that, come from very different places musically, that are things that we individually love, and I think we've all brought all of those like side loves into what we play and do. So I think that has lent itself to us maybe sounding a little bit different in some ways.
Yeah, it's not strictly
Right, it's not like we're like, we want to be a band that sounds like Minor Threat, you know, and it's like you have 5 guys that are just rewriting Minor Threat songs because, yeah, we may all like Minor Threat, but like we're also, you know, I may be pulling from a hip hop idea, you know, Greg, our original drummer, may have been pulling from like a Joy Division song, you know, so things like that where, yes, we're writing in a hardcore type of way, but like where our inside influences are coming from is maybe making it shifting the way things sound.
right. So and then I think there's a lot of jazz elements in Saetia. They're like almost free jazz. Yeah, that's this guy. Okay. And so what were you listening? What were you listening to at the time with like the demo tape, for example?
Well, that's so. It wasn't a time where I was really getting into. You know, I was talking to some kids to the podcast. It's made me revisit that point in my life, and I literally was deliberately getting into jazz. Like, it is time to get into jazz, to expand my musical horizons. And it was very shortly. It was really kind of like when we started, and it was funny because I had, you know, again, this is not like pre-internet, but it's like peri-internet. Like, you couldn't like go on American Online and go to like
The jazz room.
Jazz room. Or you could, but it'd be full of perverts. So it's like, so I was very, very legitimately just like walking into not even like record stores, but like bookstores in New York and like flipping through records and just like being like, this looks cool. You know, it's like, and you kind of, I mean, my approach was like trying to shy away from things that were like jazz compilation, you know, so it's like, oh, this actually looks like this is an artist, and it's like Verve, you know, you start like identifying labels like Blue Notes and Verve and stuff like this. It's like, oh, okay. And especially since it was cheap, so I was just buying like handfuls of them. And it was funny because like I wasn't finding guitarists, I was finding like mostly like really a lot of pianists and obviously like brass, but like informing how I played and kind of like trying to identify some of the things that they do changed the way I played guitar, because the band that I did right before Saetia was just like straight up, you know, hardcore. So this kind of like, I was like, oh, chords and like voicings and like where you put your intervals. So so that was something I just kind of was fucking around with at the time.
Yeah. And then let's speak on like how internet has changed music, like simultaneously for the good. Like, it's enhanced accessibility, and I think it's also ruined like the romance of like having to find your own jazz influences to pull from, or having to walk in and see a show physically. How have you guys noticed that's changed the scene? I know it's a tough question.
I like all those things you said, but also like what I'm very much of the mind of like there's the pre-internet world and then there's now, but at the same time, like I don't like to discount the fact that like kids that are forming bands now have their own ecosystem and their own way of finding things that are valuable and meaningful to them. So, you know, whenever these topics get introduced, I like to start just by saying like there's no better or worse, it's just different, right? So for me at least, like, and I explained this recently on Jeremy's podcast as well, like you had in New York, we had access to like CBGBs and Wetlands and like the New York hardcore scene, but I was very cognizant that there was a world outside of that I just didn't really have access to yet. So then, you know, how did you get access? Well, you bought fanzines and you found out about bands and you ordered records and you hoped they showed up like
And you
6
read
weeks
liner
later.
notes.
Right, you read liner notes,
yeah.
like who they
Thanks
thanking,
lists.
right? Thanks lists were like a huge deal. All that stuff, right? And then you find out like maybe they thank ABC No Rio in New York, and they're like, in New York, what's this ABC No Rio thing? And then maybe you go to the record store and you pick up an issue of Slug and Lettuce because it's free, and all that was basically an ABC No Rio fanzine. Like every photo in it was a photo from a show at ABC No Rio, and you're like, okay, there's actually another world here. There's like a completely different ecosystem here, like where I am. And so for me, that's what it was. And it was like, I had, it's also like becoming friends with like older kids who have been around, right? Like all the kids that introduced me to hardcore punk in high school were like a year older than me and had been going to shows. And so they sort of hit me to like these different places and these different bands and stuff. And it was becoming consistent with some of the stuff I was finding on my own. And then after that, you just kind of go. You just go out and you go to things. Like when you're like 16, you have no fear. Like you'll go to the worst neighborhood in Manhattan on like a Thursday night because the band is playing there. You know what I mean? Like you didn't really think about stuff like that. So I don't know. It was just like if you had access to it, you sort of embraced it as like this thing that only you knew about, only like a select few people knew about. And I think in that way, it's sort of different than now because now it's like the knowledge is just everywhere for the grabs, and it may have made my life like it probably would have made my life like a lot easier then. But at the same time, I think there's like also now because of that, there's like an overwhelming amount of choice. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to order these 2 7-inches because that's what I can afford, and when they show up, I'll listen to them. And then that's when you go down like the thankless rabbit hole. And you're like, okay, I have like $15. I can buy like, I don't know. Wow, remember you could buy 5 7-inches?
That's nuts. Yeah,
2 LPs.
Back in my day.
That's nice.
So, and you know, not to sort of belabor this further, I think we just sort of operated with what we have, and I think as it relates to music too, and this is probably really old-fashioned, I think when you're faced with limitations, it forces you to be more creative, and it forces you to do more interesting things with what you do have. And so I think that goes the same as for audience members, right? You have your limitations, you find where you can sort of expand those, and you try your best to do that. So, you know.
I was just gonna say, I think the worst, like there's so many benefits to the internet and everything. I think the worst part of it is that it has just killed people's attention span. You know, like as a musician, if someone that's currently like continuing to put out new music, like I love the art of like sequencing a record and like, you know, you putting something out as a complete piece, right? And while it's great, the accessibility of it, you can kind of, you know, go on whatever streaming service and, you know, hear a new band for the first time that, you know, just like that. You're also maybe someone picks out a song like midway, you know, that is through the record and you're not hearing the whole thing or you're not giving the whole piece of art a chance, you know? So for me, that's like the worst side of where we're at today with all that.
We're in the time of the singles,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
one song is.
Which doesn't really, like, for, like, to me, like, I don't know, could you imagine, like, the first Negative Approach album was, like, a few singles that came out over the course of, like, you know, 6 months? Like it just doesn't, it couldn't happen. It
No,
just
or
can't
like
happen.
Slint Spiderland. That the man.
Slint Spiderland would be one song.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
they would
one
never
of
do
the
anything
30,
else.
40-minute song, yeah. Let's speak on, like, was there any resistance at all, like, in the initial... Actually, no. Let's go to what you said, Colin, a little earlier about regarding anger, because clearly this isn't happy music by any means. What were you guys all going through that made you feel like you needed for you to really fucking scream as loud and as shrill as possible?
Most people are on the sofa, I might need to lay down.
Puberty. That's what we're at.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I think, you know, not to speak for everyone, but, you know, we're all roughly the same age, and, you know, we're all kind of going through those early 20, late teen questions you ask about yourself. Right? Like, you know, like, what do I want to do with my life? Like, who's the person I want to be? And, you know, especially when, you know, you feel like a lot of the world is telling you that the things that you're inclined to believe maybe aren't right. And I think I know for me personally, a lot of frustration came from that. And being, what I liked about being in Saetia was that even if, you know, and Billy obviously speaks the lyrics a lot better than the rest of us could, but like, even if like the song wasn't about anything I could personally relate to, just the energy behind it and the passion behind it was what I could relate to when like venting frustration and anger. And you know, it's kind of a cliched thing at this point, you know, like, you know, people like, you know, music's my therapy or something, but it really helped a lot in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this world gives you plenty of reasons to be angry. Or I don't think it's like I don't think we could say like anger is only for immaturity, right? I think there's a lot of things to be angry about. And how has that anger changed or evolved over the years?
I just think there's a lot of stuff to be angry about, but I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all kind of question. I think that, I think we've all sort of gone through, everybody's gone through trauma, even if you don't sort of recognize it as trauma, like you've gone through some sort of trauma, and I think that, you use the word catharsis earlier, I think that's really it. It's just like, there's a productive way to handle trauma, and those of us that are lucky enough to find creative outlets, use those creative outlets to process those things. The lyrics in Saetia are intensely personal, but what I never really expected over time was that people would find something in those lyrics to grasp onto, and people come to me and tell me what they think the songs are about. And it always blows my mind. I mean, I love those conversations because it shows you that we all have this commonality of appreciating that sort of energy and that ability to process through music or through art, even if we're not making it. The ability to personalize something that you hear and feel it, have it resonate with you, even if you don't really know the intent, is the whole purpose. And so, the goal with the lyrics, everything was intensely personal, but it's also, I think the lyrical themes are often broad enough so that people can kind of pick and choose things from them that make sense to them. I know when I listen to bands, I may not agree or be able to relate to everything in sort of a black and white way, but at the same time, I can appreciate that it's making me feel something, right? And it's giving me my own associations that make sense to me. And the fact that people are able to do that with Saetia, I think is sort of a great privilege for us to be able to hear about, what people get out of it, 20, 25 years later. So yeah, I mean, for me at least, revisiting all this stuff is, in some sense, it's like painful in a sense, but it's not the sort of visceral pain of when it happened. It's remembering that these things happen and being proud of the fact that, I found a collective of people that could sort of support my ability to process those things and simultaneously process their own trauma or things that they were dealing with, and create this sort of collective energy that other people get something out of. It's like, to me, that's the whole thing. Like, if you've accomplished that, you've accomplished your goal, in my opinion.
Definitely. And let's talk on initial reception of Saetia. Was that off the bat fucking back venues?
It was off the bat disinterest.
What was the dynamic like on those first few shows?
We had polite friends.
Friends who were very willing to indulge us.
Yeah.
Well, I think Jamie would work at ABC No Rio. He was such a fixture there that when his new band was playing there, it was like, yeah, we definitely had people in the basement because they're his friends. They want to see what his new band sounds like and to support. So, but it wasn't like after the first couple of shows, it was like we had this automatic crowd coming because they were because of the sound of the band or whatever. I just think it was like. We were playing ABC No Rio, and there's a show happening, and some friends are going to come out.
Probably the most fortunate thing that happened for any exposure was that we got a mount, because that really, and it's crazy in retrospect. It was like when Chris pitched it to us, I was just like,
in a cemetery, right?
Was it?
No, I think it was at NYU. I think it was after when I threw my back out. When we played
I always have it in my head that it was at the cemetery after the Long Island show in Huntington at the Huntington Y, and we walked over to that cemetery. And he was there. And we were talking with him.
Being that your memory is so specific, I would say that is the right answer.
The show you're taught that I remember having a meeting with him about the record.
Yeah, we definitely
okay.
But that helped as far as exposure, and people but then in hindsight, it's also like, oh yeah, that was no exposure, It's like,
also,
it was an important label for us.
Yeah.
I loved everything that came out on Mountain. Was such a huge record for me when I was a kid. So.
Yeah. Two sort of quick thoughts. One is that the Mountain community was sort of an extension, I think, of just the band, because there were bands that we were already playing with. It was kind of like its own ecosystem. And if I had to point to something, before we were talking about this sort of delineation between this sort of traditional New York hardcore world and this other stuff, right? And I think when, in rapid succession, Mountain released Saetia, Closure, and the State Secedes, not in that order. But that just became sort of our crew. Like, we essentially just played with those bands. Then when Level Plane got started, it kind of extended beyond that.
I was going to well, the
Level Plane, what happened? Oh, sorry.
I remember they're all on my own
Chris
Facebook.
You could edit that part out.
Yes.
I'm with Billy on that one for sure. I always think of that record being out on Mountain.
This is like
Thank you.
this is like an instrument. It's like, oh yeah, Ian MacKaye, he's a Black Flag and Led Zeppelin, man. Fucking love that guy. I can't fuck with him.
You could edit that part out. But actually,
Chris
no, leave that part
was
in.
the States.
and Chris was in the
Chris,
States.
okay,
So
that's true. Good
I
point.
get a pass. But no, I just want to point this out because someone is watching this right now and being like, "Oh, they were just talking about the internet, blah blah blah." The irony is not lost on me that at the beginning of the 2000s and the advent of like record trading boards and Makeout Club and like Viva La Vinyl and all that shit, when people were able to talk in real time nationally on like a very regular basis and something that was just very quickly became part of youth culture, there is no doubt in my mind that like that is really what sort of benefited Saetia the most, was that people around the world could talk about these records in a way that they were not able to before. You had pen pals and all that stuff, but you couldn't have hundreds of people in like a virtual room at the same time talking about records the way that stuff popped up in like 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. Like when I moved to London in 2000, and when I got back in 2001, like Saetia was a thing. It was not really like that level of thing before I left. It sort of started to take on a life of its own while I was away. From my recollection, at least, maybe I got that all wrong as well, but I seem to remember that it really, the sort of like subcultural cache that Saetia had, I think, really started to develop around that time outside of New York, like beyond New York, in a way that was sort of different than the sort of momentum behind it previous to that. Even with the one US tour, I feel like the band and lots of bands very much benefited from the internet and being able to like access music on the internet and have conversations with like-minded people that were not just people you saw at shows. There were people like from all over the world. So I think that in that way, this subculture really sort of benefited and really kind of caught fire around that time. I think. Do you guys disagree?
I would agree. I would also say like the discography came out.
Yeah, the level playing momentum helped as well, obviously.
And I always say, we had a good friend of ours, Adam Schwartz, would take photographs at almost every one of our shows, and a lot of them would be some of the iconic photos that you see all over. And I always say it's like the music was great, the lyrics were great, but like those photos make us look far more interesting than we were. It's just like the perfect shots, not when Jamie and I bump into each other, fall to the ground and stuff like that. And I think that, along with the fact that you can share this stuff, like Billy was saying, just like helped the mystique of the band grow as time went on.
And then outside of music, what were you guys consuming? I mean, with songs like Venus and Bacchus, like there's clearly there's clearly some Italian art influence there. And so what else were you guys consuming other than music at that time?
I was always a book nerd. I think that comes across to me. Yeah, pretty pretentiously.
Well, you were a classics major.
I was a literature and art history major. Greg was a classics major and art history major.
So
he
that's
didn't write any word. He wrote 0 words.
Zero words.
I started reading books on the side when I joined the band. He talked about like Gothic cathedrals and stuff. I'd be like, roller biscuits?
And what were you guys all going to school for? Like, what was the alternative plan for life? Before Saetia was still in ABC.
Everyone's looking at me. I'm a doctor. My plan was to go to medical school, and I did it now. Filthy. Talking about a band I did.
What was your plan, bud?
Music. That's all I ever wanted to do. So
Yeah.
I was just, and to this day, still consistently consuming music and just always going to shows still and trying to check out new bands and stuff. So yeah, it's what I've always wanted to do.
Was there ever any like stress that shit, this might not work out? Okay.
Yeah, all the time. And then eventually it was like I went back to school to kind of bring myself into what I do now, but like still music has always been a consistent in my life.
So what were jobs that you guys had at that time? Like, were you balancing a side
Sullivan
hustle
Street
as well?
Bakery.
Yeah, we worked together. We
We
actually
were slinging ciabattas.
I worked with him at a bakery, which was still to this day the best job I've ever had in my entire life.
How
And I
long
worked
did you
with-
last there?
Oh, I was there for like a year.
Oh, okay.
We got fired for going on tour.
And we got fired for going on tour with Saetia, which was one of 2 times I got fired for going on tour. And then then Steve and I worked at the Office of Student Activities at NYU. So.
You had an NYU job, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it was
got
me.
one.
Yeah, Steve was like the recruiter
Bet you're happy about that.
with Adam Schwartz.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, we were.
Got the whole family in there.
It was wild.
Yeah, Billy would print IDs.
Yeah, I worked at the ID center.
And Colin worked for NYU too.
Yeah, I worked for the NYU bookstore, and met my wife there, which was awesome. These guys probably gave them discounts on things they shouldn't have gotten discounts on. So. Actually, I think
Not
we
enough.
met. I think you and I met there. Was wearing a Joy Division shirt, and I think you asked me to some like goth show at like Downtime or something.
Yeah. Wow, you remember that?
Yeah, I was like,
I'll tell you what that show was. You want to know what that show was?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was Black Tape for a Blue Girl
Okay.
at Downtime,
yeah.
and it was the night that Princess Diana died.
Oh
It
shit!
turned out. I mean, I didn't know that was going to be that night, but it ended up being that night.
That was on the bill. That was the headline.
over here.
That's a funny story.
Well, listen,
I mean, not Princess Diana dying. It's not a funny story.
I was at a
Terrible.
goth show that night. They like the sound guy had announced it like between bands, and I thought it was a joke. I was like, oh, it's supposed to be like some goth
Did you
thing.
do it like in a goth voice? It's like Princess Diana's dead.
I was like, oh, those wacky goth kids.
Sounded like Jim Morris.
That was great.
I think that was a Bauhaus.
That was a Bauhaus. Yeah.
I caught that.
I'm totally fucking. But the kids are gonna fucking cream their jeans over this one.
I'm afraid.
No,
of
because you're talking about the night Princess Diana died. Again, terrible tragedy affected the world. But fucking Mark McCoy started staying with me. He lived with me for like 2 weeks or
Oh, I
something
remember
at my
that.
parents' house. And that was the first day he gets there. And he comes into the house and my mom is weeping inconsolably at the table. And I'm like, I'm just going to show Mark up to his room. Mark McCoy is the singer for Charles Bronson. Blah, 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 blah. And Mark, and if you've never met Mark, he sounds like Pee Wee Herman. So we're walking up the stairs. He's like, dude, what's up with your mom? And I'm like, you cold-hearted bastard. Princess Diana's
Yeah. In regards to parents, what were your guys' parents' reaction to
Princess
Saetia
Diana?
initially?
My dad came. The only show my dad ever came to was when I played at CBGB's.
Okay.
And my mom was at our very first show at ABC No Rio in the basement.
Yeah.
And everyone's subsequently, or
What was that?
everyone subsequently after too. Or just the first one that never.
No,
again?
Superman. Superman.
No, she came to that one, and then
Maybe I don't mind.
my aunt came to the CB show.
Did you get
Yeah.
They like draw sticks or something like that.
They're just always supportive. Like, to this day, they
Yeah.
still come see me play when I play. So they'll probably try to make it out to one of these shows in November.
My dad almost fell over when I told him we were playing shows.
Really?
Yeah, and he was at the CB show.
Leave it there. And then talk about like your guys' reaction to the revival of Saetia and how it's been seeing all the support from fans and in proportion to like what the shows were like.
I know we got to deliver now.
Yeah.
We fucked around and soon we'll find out.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
As I was saying to you
It's really
before off
surprising.
camera, it's just like, everyone's kind of giving us shit for like, why are you playing such a small place? And we honestly, we were like, okay, one show at St. Vitus, that'll be cool.
St. Vitus would have been too big for us.
Yeah, so that's all we have in our heads. So it's not like we're gonna go, hey, we're gonna play a show now. Like, let's book MSG. Like, it's just nothing like that within our heads. So, but people as outsiders, everyone that's not one of the 5 of us was like, you guys are crazy. Like, what were you thinking? But we just didn't think anything of it. So yeah, it's just, we're still shocked anytime that we announce something or do something, and like just the reaction to it's really insane.
You know, the hype is just hype, you know, until people actually go, you know, until they buy tickets at least. So it's like, you can seem like a big deal, and then nobody actually cares enough to go. You know, it's like these things happen. You know, it's like
we also live in a world that is very separate from Saetia. Like every day, like
I don't.
well, you know, but the rest of us have like families, we have like careers, we have stuff that we're doing like that's pretty significant outside of music. So we're not following, like the kids that are coming to the show are like they're locked in, they're like following this subculture, they're living it, and in some sense we've kept touch points with it. But for the majority of us in the band, like, you know, we'll get emails every so often like, oh, the band means a lot, and all that stuff comes through, but the volume of people interested was not something I think we really took serious consideration of. We thought that they would be fun and people would be there, but not to the extent that it ended up, not the way it ended up rolling out was not, I don't think any of us could have, even in the best sort of optimism of the situation, I don't think that any of us would have thought that it would be like that. And then kids are like, "What are you, stupid? Like, what the fuck? Like we're already catching shit. Like seriously, we've been back for about 7 minutes, and we're getting like, fuck you guys. Like, oh, like how did you not know this? Like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? I would have done it this way." And it's like, this is why we haven't done this in 23 years.
Do
Like,
your own fucking reunion.
yeah, form your own band.
You do the
Form your own band and play those
and then
songs
we'll
23 years
shit
from
on
now.
you.
Like I run the Saetia Instagram page, so I'm the one that sees like the shit getting piled on me every day, you know, for in the comments, and I'm really good about just ignoring like anyone that is just like saying something stupid. But there's this one time that I just like, it got under my skin so much, which was just like a comment like when we announced the third show at Vitus, and it was like, because people were complaining how fast the first two shows sold out. So we made the decision to like, okay, we worked with Vitus on making the third show all ages, and then I was like, we can't do advance tickets. I'm like, because people like think there's some conspiracy about it, right? So we were just like, I said, let's just do at the door, right? So we make this announcement for the third show, and I'm like thinking like, this is the answer, right? Like people are gonna be stoked because there's no advance, like everyone has an opportunity to come to this show. We post it, and then like 10 minutes later, it's like, what a dick move! Like, we expect us to just stand outside all night. I'm like, oh wait. So we do advance tickets. That's the wrong move. We do no advance tickets. That's not the right move. So I'm just like,
We're trying to find our way in a complicated world.
yeah.
Yes.
Where apparently you can do no right.
I hear from clients in my day job, and it's never just like, what the fuck, like you're gonna make me wait, like how, like yes, you delivered too quickly, like that literally is never something I hear.
Yeah, and because you guys are cited as like a really important project in the hardcore scene, and in retrospect, do you guys see how people now could think that you guys were foundational in creating like the soft, loud juxtaposition? I mean,
I think
The Pixies did that.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think that this sort of nebulous group that we refer to as like the people, I think like those are conversations that have happened between those people, and they have said we're foundational. Like at no point have we ever said or agreed that we're foundational. We've just made music. The band and the foundational aspect and what people say about it kind of takes on a life of its own. I'm very careful to like not wade into that. I think we all are sort of careful to not wade into that. I think we were doing the same thing that any of your friends that started bands, we were doing the exact same thing. There was no secret sauce. There was no magic. There was no like levers that we pulled that made things happen in ways that didn't happen for other people. It was just lightning in a bottle. What came out of it was like the combination of personalities and the way those personalities moved around and evolved over time. But other than that, it's the same as anybody starting a band and just going for it and playing music that they were proud to not sort of get pigeonholed into like this or that. You just sort of play what you feel, and I think if people are true to that, then good things can happen. I think if you start a band because you want to be another band, then good things are limited, or different things are limited, right? You may be really good at doing that, but it's been done. You're doing something that's been done. So I don't think any of us had the idea like we're going to create a world, we're going to create some ecosystem, or we're going to like take some ecosystem to a level that it hasn't been before. I think we just wanted to play punk, and we wanted to yell, we wanted to run around, we wanted people to sing along, we wanted to have cool photos of people grabbing the mic. We wanted people to mosh. I mean, the things we wanted out of it were very much like what anyone wants out of it when they start a punk band. That was it. So, you know, for what it's worth, 10 billion people did this shit before us and approached their bands the same way, and 1 in 500,000 are remembered, right? And from now on, you know, people will start a band next year, and maybe there'll be that 1 in 500,000 that's remembered 20 years from now. No one can predict it. No one can predict it. You just make music, and you just go.
I will say though that, I joined Saetia like a year or so into it, or almost a year. So I had seen them a few times before joining, and so I always had this, you know, especially initially, this almost like outsider perspective on the band of like, I knew how awesome this band was. And I felt like I'm not being a dick by saying that because I was watching them, like I wasn't in the band. And even like they quickly became one of my favorite bands definitely from that scene, and just knew like there's something different going on. So it's like, so even I found myself like when we were on tour sometimes, and like, you know, we're playing at 12 people that don't seem to really be into it. I was like, no, like this is something special, and like, you know, so for me, it's kind of like, what have you all been waiting on? Like, you know, it's like, it's nice to see that people are genuinely excited about what was created. But yeah, like going back to what Billy said though, it's like, it wasn't like we are going to be a foundational band in hardcore. It's like, no, we're gonna make goofy music with our friends, and, you know. But you know, I knew there was something special with this band.
A lot of you guys have like families, or have turned into domesticated, like, for lack of a better word. And I know, like, when I found Station, it's like, it's so dark and that music is so unsettling. It was like, I wouldn't be surprised if these kids are dead. Like,
Jesus, man.
Yeah, really. I mean, it sounds horrific, and
We are dead.
Some of the most dreadful sounds I've heard.
just
In a good way. But how was that transition from like
I think you're a different band. Didn't James kill Adam and eat his brain? You know, it's
making
like,
a
dude,
living and settling down.
Lords of Darkness, you know?
Settling down was very easy for me. I like quiet.
Oh yeah.
Settling down was awesome.
Sorry.
Me and Adam drank decaf this morning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like what the sounds came out doesn't necessarily correlate with who we are as people. You know what I mean? So,
We have different motivations. When we get together, this is what comes out sonically. But we have our lives that, I don't know, we're marginally happy with. I would say. I'm gonna say I'm very happy with my life. I hope the rest of us are pretty happy.
I'm happy. Hope you're happy too.
That's right.
yeah, it's just nice that we get to, you know, have our families and have our careers and stuff, but then we get to, you know, hang out for a week in November and you know, just do this kind of stuff. Like, my favorite part about this whole thing is that we've been able to reconnect, like, and you know, and we just have so much fun on like these group texts like every day, and we're just like joking around and, you know, making decisions and the occasional Zoom phone call, and now we get to like hang out this weekend. It's just been so awesome.
After I can speak personally that after the last like 2 to 5 years with what's gone on in the world, it's nice to have something to look forward to. I feel like it's been a really, really long time before I've personally had something gratifying to look forward to, that was creative and was involved. You know, people I care about, in a sort of very direct and very visceral kind of way. So, you know, for that reason, this has been like a big boost. Personally speaking, again, this has been a big boost to my mental health. Just preparing for this and the group texts and all that stuff, I feel connected to the world again. You know, for the last 2 years, I've sort of been living under like our family has been living under like a self-imposed lockdown because we have a little one who could only recently get vaccinated. So we haven't really been out in the world and interacting with the world in the ways that we normally would. And to have something that feels both special and more closer to normal, you know, at the same time has been like a huge factor for me. it's been a ray of sunshine. Whether or not the music is dark, and I died at 1 or 2, as the internet once said. Did you guys know that?
What?
If you look, if there was a point where there was a thing that said Billy Warner died at ages 1 or 2,
Jesus.
which is great because that just meant like no one could tell in 1978 or 9 there wasn't the technology to determine like actually when someone died.
It's like you really exist on a quantum level, like I can't actually know if you're
So your
alive or dead.
question, your question and assumption is actually not completely out of left field. The internet told me I was dead a couple times.
Billy is Schrodinger's cat.
We know that one. We're both dead and alive at the same time.
That's me. That's why I sound like this.
Yeah, sure. And then I want to just touch on like
Yes.
how the Vitus shows are a benefit show, and I want to speak on how like this scene can be a vessel for helping others.
This scene should be a vessel for helping others. It should not exist for any other reason. That's the last thing I'll say about that. I mean, honestly, like if you're not involved in punk because you believe that there's a better world possible that values sort of equality and boosting up marginalized voices, then you're in my opinion, you're not involved for the right
You're in the wrong
reasons.
place.
The whole purpose of punk is to imagine and mobilize a better world, both directly and indirectly. And so, for us, I think it was just like a no-brainer. There was always meant to be some benefit component. I think the only, completely transparently, candidly, the only component we talked to is to what scale should the benefit be, and we made a decision based on that. But there was never a question that there would be a component where we would use whatever momentum still existed to leverage good things and help marginalized folks. I don't think any of us would feel really 100% right about it if that was not some kind of factor. So, Jamie, Adam, Steve, Colin, I've been doing all the talking because I'm just kind of a dick, but you guys should say something too.
Well, it's definitely, and actually, when you going back to what you're asking,
That's really for you.
No.
I don't.
How's the feedback?
I mean, we're gonna take the pause, you know.
But yeah, I think
Hot mic shit's going on over here.
I feel
That's
like
fire.
yeah, you guys are fine.
They're calling us out. They're like, "Are we good?"
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Just roll.
so when you were asking about, sorry, now that,
It's
many of us have our families and stuff, it's like one of the nice things is that, I feel like the hardcore scene and punk in general and just like alternative viewpoints like help shape me as a person, and to be able to like pass that down to our children, as best we can, is like that seems the whole point. And then tying back to what Billy was saying, it's like, yeah, I think for all of us, it wasn't, I don't even remember if there was like a conversation, but we all kind of instinctively were like, yeah, if we're gonna do this, if we could raise, $100, it's like we can donate that to a charity. Now we're gonna be raising more than $100 for the charity, and it just feels really good. And even the debate over which charities we going to donate, that was just, I think Jamie and Steve did most of the research on the charities, make sure that it would be the right fit for the amount of money we can realistically raise, but also in line with our overall needs and our moral outlook. It's just, as Billy said, like none of us need to do this financially. Like we're all
We're all comfortable.
So like you're not punk if you're just gonna take the money and run. Right?
Perfect. I think that seems right. You have anything else?
I was wondering if you guys had any commentary on like interpersonal relationships within Saetia. Like, you guys all seem very tight now, but have you always been like best friends, or?
I think we've been close. I think
Fuck these guys.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
So it is
I
special to come
I could be a fucking unmitigated asshole on the road and stuff, and I would like to think that I've matured in the last 23 years and I've become a better version of myself. But I mean, the fact that we're just able to do it, I feel like we've sort of just picked up where we left off as friends, and we're just sort of back in the saddle at different stages in our life. And I think, like, speaking personally, I think I just have more perspective on life now, and I sort of run with the philosophy that everybody's just trying to do their best in this world. Like, no one has like a perfect life or a perfect path or a perfect approach. Everybody's just trying to survive. And those of us who are like, and it goes beyond sort of like financial comfort or anything like that. Like, people are just trying to get by, just like wake up the next day. And like that, to me, I sort of like tried to apply that to my personal relationships as well, as like, to sweat the small stuff is like ridiculous anymore. And I think I did a lot of sweating the small stuff during the course of my previous life. You know, when I would have been doing bands in my 20s and stuff. Now, like, life has brought perspective, you know, especially over the last few years. It's like, you know, you need to hold on to the folks that can actually tolerate you.
We also all agreed that like every decision we make is going to be the decision that we collectively make, and we want this to be fun. You know, like, if it's not fun, what's the point of doing it, right? So it's like, it's a really low pressure situation, because we've been getting, obviously, since announcing all this stuff and that we're playing, like, we've just been getting a ton of like offers and asked to do this, come play here, come play there. And it's like, yeah, it's great. It's like, if we can, we will. And you know, there's definitely places in the world that we want to see and things we want to do, but like, it has to fit everyone's day-to-day life with no stress and something that we all agree on. So, you know, if you have that in your head from the jump, it's like, there's never any feeling of stress about the situation. So this is like vacation and fun for us.
Another thing I was going to add is that when you're young, I feel like one of the double-edged sword of being in Saetia was that there was a lot of this kind of like fucked up dysfunctional personality shit that like came into the music. But now we kind of like grown up a little bit. I'm like a recovering asshole, so it's like I feel like we've kind of with time mellowed out a little bit, and now we can have the kind of relationship that's like the best aspects of it without without a lot of like the weird like internal torments and like because it was I think one of the things that's coming across from all is like a lot of what goes into being in a punk band, a hardcore band, is being angry, and sometimes it's just a question of like you've got so much of it. I mean, I know I did, and it was, where does it go? And there's only so much you can go anywhere. So there was a lot of like just out, a lot of it just coming out. So now I feel like, and especially like the pandemic, having families, for me, like having a real job really changed my personality a lot, because, doing what I do, it was like,
you have to be a people person.
Well, not even that. It puts to be honest, what I'm talking about is like the perspective on life, which is like, shit, you're dead tomorrow. It's like when I'm dealing with like, when I'm coming home covered in someone else's blood. Hey man, you should have looked at me that way on the subway. That's the problem.
You should clean up.
It's like, but it changes your perspective on life, and like having a kid and having a family and just being like, this is not something where I feel like as a young punk kid I was just like a fucking powder keg, and like looking just to like
we all were
go off. I feel like we all were when we were, it was a lot of like abrasive people in a group. So when you talk about like how the dynamic has changed, I feel like things have really improved, because like the personalities are still there. Like we still, like I talk to these guys and it's like, oh, it's like the same shit. It's like we could have walked outside of like the practice joint we used to go to on 26th Street, and same kind of like bullshit banter, but like without like the that kind of stuff. So
listen, I think there's something very New York about once you guys get together and just busting each other's balls, and we would definitely do that, which is fine when you're in the rehearsal studio or something, but when you do even a week-long tour, that gets old pretty quick. And I think like
We don't have a cutoff
What are you
switch.
referring to?
It's on. Yeah.
Wait, so you're talking about
We
college?
just don't know when. Like we literally cannot stop busting each other's balls. Like to this day.
Yeah,
Like,
to a fault.
I mean, yeah, it just doesn't stop. It doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop, but I think that's kind of like
Better intentioned now.
Yeah, it's
It's
a lot of
better
love.
Like I
behind
said
it.
last night,
Yeah.
you see the buttons, we don't push every one of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Select few. Yeah.
they're there though. They're still there.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
You guys kind of answered this, and this will be the last question. But how was, and maybe it wasn't,
I
but
got
how was Saetia? What's it?
Keep going. I
How
don't
was
know.
Saetia helpful to life now, or was it not at all? Or do you think you learned anything from that experience?
Do you mean like in like life in
Yeah,
general?
life, like the whole DIY. Like, you truly made a band of yourself, and how's that perseverance applied? So,
I mean,
I learned how to not do a lot of things. I think, from Saetia. Like I will say,
Don't do what we
yeah,
do.
like I don't know, like I
Steve's been holding his tongue before.
no,
he
it's
came
fine,
in.
it's
He
fine.
flew like a
Well,
fucking fire.
it's funny, like when people start when like the questions are about like the formation of the band. I was not in the band at the beginning of the band, so I am defaulting to those who were there. Yeah, I mean I don't like I feel like we toured kind of like dummies. Like we had a lot of crazy long drives that were like inhumanly long, and like we would never stay at people's houses. We would usually after the show drive until like we couldn't keep our eyes open anymore, and then get a hotel at like 4 a.m. that we could sleep in for like 4 hours, and then have to get up and go again. Anyway, whatever.
Right.
But also just like I think, yeah, I've grown a lot as a person, and in the time since, obviously, and you know, I think in reflecting, I think this is I feel like I'm going in a total negative direction.
No, shit.
But yeah, just I think I was as I was younger, I was a lot more tolerant. I think of things directed at me that were unfairly directed at me. I think now I think I am a lot better at advocating for myself now than I was then, generally in the world. So
that's something that's positive.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
came out of it.
Let's go around the room and talk about how Saetia's improved your life.
yeah.
Well, I'm about to do that actually. One thing I would say is, so I'm a New York City public school teacher for 23 years, basically from almost the
From
day I
Saetia
quit
to the
Saetia to teaching social studies. And you know, there are times, and unfortunately we're in one of those times now where, like, you know, budgets are cut and things aren't, you know, there aren't a lot of resources. But, you know, touring in any punk band or Saetia, it's like you learn, like, all right, so I don't have everything I want, but I got X, Y, and Z. How do I make that work? And just like, and I've worked with other people that just don't have that mentality of, and nothing against them, but it's more like, you know, I want the package so I can do whatever I'm doing. Whereas I'm like, all right, I don't have the package, but I got some twine and some glue. Here's your new curriculum. You know, it's like you just make it work, because, you know, like when you're touring and like your band is spewing oil or liquid or whatever, you got to figure out a way to make that work. You know, and you know,
The answer is usually
what I
not.
got. Yes.
Life gives you brake fluid.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's not so much Saetia for me, but just being in a DIY situation, similar to what Colin said. It's like you figure out how to just make do and make lemonade out of lemons. It's like I feel like that's what DIY is like there's like many species of lemons and many flavors of lemonade.
I always
You learn which
describe-
ones you don't like.
I always describe going on tour as a series of bad experiences that in hindsight are funny.
Retrospect looks better.
You know?
You know, it's the Smiths one. I can smile about it now, but at the time it was terrible.
I don't know. I think there was a lot of good that came out of that for all of us, even if it means we're like sitting on this porch right now. I think that's like probably the best aspect of it. I learned that I could see these guys later in life. It was like, and it's a really good thing.
See a 20-year break.
We might have needed a 20-year break.
It's a cooling off period.
All right, Steve.
Damn props and everything.
Yeah.
couple more.
That's a good way to end it.
Just for B, that would be it. We'll edit it. B-roll stuff. What media outside of music do you guys consume? TV shows, movies. Like, what brings you comfort?
Just wrap around that table.
We're constantly texting Goodfellas lines to each other often.
You want like contemporary shit?
Yeah.
Like recommendations?
Yes,
like,
please.
Like you enjoy football.
I do enjoy the sports known as football. The one you kick. Colin and I have a relationship outside of all this shit with a team called Arsenal. Unfortunately.
I'll join that club with you guys.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'm really good at losing teams.
I was gonna say, don't expect that.
Hey, no, there's a personality thing. So.
I don't root for teams that win.
So
Just
definitely
Goodfellas and football.
Good fellas football.
Pizza.
I mean, I'm
Awesome.
comic books. Humongous Star Wars fan.
I'm reading Rick Perlstein's Nixonland right now, which is taking me literal years to get through. In full on dad mode. I also consume a lot of Kids Bop and Disney Plus.
Kids
That's-
Bob
that's-
Sasha.
Kids Bop station would be disturbing.
I'm next in line, Billy. So
Oh, I'll help guide you.
yeah, cool.
I got really into
Bluey, really good. Bluey is
the
awesome.
comic books.
Focus on Bluey.
This Italian comic book guy. I mean, he's not a revelation to like anyone in Italy, but
What do you put out on Revelation?
it's just he's Slipknot. He did that Slipknot stuff.
That 7 inches underrated. It's a fucking underrated
It's not the
record.
guys with the fucking masks on. No, Zero Calcare.
Okay.
Have you heard of this?
No.
You seen this? You heard of this? He has a show on Netflix. I don't know if I should advocate for Netflix, but it's called Terror Along the Lines. And he's a punk kid. He's a punk kid from Rome.
Shit.
It's really fucking awesome to watch. And I'm reading the comics now because he's got some that are in English and some that are in Italian. So I'm reading some of them. Reading a little bit of both. And I highly recommend it because it's an interesting, like I said, he's a punk kid. He was like in the scene, and like his stuff is really kind of personal, like from his childhood, and like a lot of it has to do with like his anxieties and his own internal world. So that's something that the world.
Cool with it, bro.
It's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, let me take a quick Polaroid of you guys. Before.
Yeah, if you get a chance, it's
What's it called?
It's called Terror Along the
I don't think I
Terror Along the
have.
Lines.
It's animated.
Terror.
Yeah, it's a comic book.
Terror.
But the Netflix thing is animated.
Oh yeah, it's
Really
animated.
cool. Try it out. I'm gonna try it out.